in the name of healing, we've been talking about trauma, trauma reference points and things like this. So you're in a relationship and you find that some healing needs to take place. What comes first? Individual therapy or couples therapy? Meaning, like, you see some issues, y'all had a conversation. Do you feel like you go to therapy individually first and then y'all make it a couples therapy? Does couples therapy come first? What's y'all thoughts on in that process? Which one should come first?
Neither. I think they're done simultaneously. Um,
Okay.
I think individual therapy should happen as well as couples therapy, but I also think if you have a good couples therapist, um, they take you out individually and talk to you individually about certain things, so you can come back together and kind of take on those things. But I do think individual therapy sometimes when we have couples therapy, it's hyper focused on what's happening in the relationship, communication. We're talking about all the things that's the foundation of a relationship, and then it could go back to some sort of trauma, childhood trauma. Attachment styles is something big that we like to use in couples therapy. Um, but then if you're talking individually, you can really get to the core root of something, because in couples therapy, I will say that once they bring out that core trauma or healing that inner child, and then your partner's looking at you sideways, like, I kid you not, it comes up all the time where it's like, oh well, that's why. Oh, that's connect. You were looking for love in all the wrong places because your mama didn't give it to you. Like, it could cause more damage in your relationship than if you go and heal that part of you individually. So I definitely think they should happen simultaneously at the same time with different therapists.
So Louis B.
I think mm, sound like someone trying to get some billable hours. But what I'm thinking is,
Maybe.
so I think it's individual first, and
Okay.
because of how because you didn't do it before you got into a relationship or got married or to a commitment, I think the couples therapy does have to be a part of that journey, though, right? But I think first, individually, you have to do the work on you to understand yourself and your responses and why you respond to things that way, and who you truly are. um it's, speaking personally from my journey, it allowed me to understand why things were showing up, to Brittany's point, in my relationship, not only with my in my marriage, but in my parenting and at my job, you know what I'm saying, or in my interactions with friends. Like, it allowed me to understand some of the things that I've been dealing with, and I think I got so much more of being able to just pour and really be, I don't want to say be selfish, but really prioritize me, because I think the better me I am, the better that relationship and the better I'm going to be for that relationship. So I think you have to get into a certain point to where you can actually recognize and understand how therapy can help you as a person before you start bringing that into an environment with someone else.
Hey, so Louis, can I ask you a question to that?
Mhm.
Before you went you said that question now based off your experience that you had, right?
Mhm.
Before you went on your own, did you did couples therapy push you to individual, or did Lewis seek individual first?
Lewis sought individual first. I don't think couples therapy would have been as effective if I didn't go on my own.
Mm, mhm.
I wouldn't have been able to understand. It would have been productive, but I really had to understand me. I really had
Mhm.
to understand me. And I think, like, when you commit or you marry somebody, I think it's two individuals becoming one, right? And I think as that journey progresses, you're still your own person while you two are moving in this direction together. And I think that it's important for two people to have a really strong and sense of understanding of themselves so that they can understand how both need to move forward together. So that's why I think that individual part is so important, because people get lost and wrapped up in the idea of being married and in marriage, that they lose sense of self. And I think you have to first define that and center yourself there before you can move effectively or as effectively as you can on that journey together.
Hmm.
Mhm. Well said, brother. Partner, what you think? What's for you? Which comes first? Which comes second?
Um, I think, yeah, I think individual should come first. Um, but I do think that with couple, like I don't think it should end though once you start couples counseling.
Mhm.
To Britt's point, like I definitely think that when you're in couples counseling, I think that you do have to have that space that you then go back to process what just happened in couples counseling, absent from your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, and granted, that is not my area of expertise. That's all Brit. But in my mind, with couples and stuff like that, like there are certain things that's going to come up in that session that you did not anticipate, that you did not think about, that you when y'all have to leave from that session, it's going to be an awkward car ride home. And you do need a safe space to then go to process how you then receive that messaging.
Mm-hmm.
How did that sit with you and the things that you did not even say, right? Because there are some things too that the partner might not know is a trigger or did come up, all those things. So I think individuals should come first to Lewis's point. Um, and yeah, and then I think being able to introduce couples counseling, but then I think it should kind of maintain at the same time for sure.
Yeah. And I'm gonna double down on what Lewis said, but just in a different way. Just make sure you're not going to therapy for anybody else. Because when I
Yeah.
went, it was solely just like, oh no, I gotta figure
Mhm.
this out. Now I will say this that I'm what's the buzzword vulnerable. When I went, bro, it just made me like I think it could work both ways, right? Like nobody's perfect. You learn a lot about yourself, but it also reassured me that I wasn't crazy in certain instances. You know what I mean? Like the thing that you think may be crazy or that you shouldn't be reacting to, or the way you react to something, you could go and realize like, oh no, dag, I have been handling that the right way. I will say this. I think it is very hard to operate in a relationship if only one person is seeking individual.
Boy.
I, I think that is so hard to operate in that space
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
because you're learning so much about yourself and you're healing parts of you and the one thing I appreciate about my wife when I went, she went just because she was like, I don't want you to feel like you on that journey by yourself, even if she didn't necessarily feel like something that she had to do on her own. But she took the initiative to show me, like, I don't want you to be working on yourself and you think I'm not. So I appreciated that, right? But in the
Mm-hmm.
very same note, as I'm very high on like self-improvement, right? If you are not aligned with getting you and your partner wanting to get better individually, boy, that can cause some turmoil. What?
Mm-hmm.
It really can. You got to be real about it. And I'm gonna be real about couples therapy that I don't like. Be real. Be feel like you don't be talking about the real shit. You be talking about what we picked in the car last night for dinner, and we got a bigger issue outside of why we bickering over that small thing. I think sometimes in couples therapy, if it's not approached to actually solve the problem and it's only approached by the couple to be heard, that's a venting session.
Mhm.
Like
Hmm.
if you don't have an intent or a goal of why you all are going to fix an issue that you can't understand, and you're going just to, it sounds good, but y'all just want to be heard. You want the other person to hear you without judgment. She wants you to hear me, but I ain't really here for no goal. That's counterproductive to me.
That's the therapist's job, though. A lot of couples come in for that reason, Keenan, just to be heard. It's a he say she say pointing fingers all
Mhm.
session long. But it's up to the therapist to then jump in and say, okay, stop. Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what she said? Repeat it back to me. What did you hear? And as you sift through those conversations, you connect the dots of, hey, you remember when you said X, Y, and Z back when that triggered you? That's your trigger. Let's talk about it. Did you know that triggered him? Like your therapist has to connect those dots because a
Yeah,
lot of
I don't,
times
I don't want
couples
to be
come
too
into
rigid.
those they come into those spaces just wanting to be heard. Like we got in an argument last night, you're not listening to me, so we got a therapist that's a middleman that's going to let me talk. It's not about just talking, it's conflict resolution. So what are we going to get out of this? If your therapist is not giving you that, then you need to find somebody else.
I agree, but
And hold on,
yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
double down too from the individual therapist side too. Like it's the same thing. Like people that come into individual therapy also just want to vent. And it's like, yeah, sure, that can be a part of it, right? But if you are going to a therapist, for whoever's listening, and you are never challenged, if you go there and you are never in disagreement with your therapist, right?
Man.
You should feel somewhat challenged by them
Yeah.
Like, no,
Mhm.
that's not right. I'm not avoidant. No, like you should have those moments, right? You should not ever feel like, whew, I'm glad I got that off my chest, and you didn't learn anything. You didn't have a
Mhm.
takeaway, right? If you're doing that, I'm be honest, you're wasting your money. You could just call a friend for that.
Yep.
That's the part I wasn't
Um,
prepared for when I went. I was like, yo, I'm really pissed off at this lady right now. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. It's
honestly, that's really where my healing journey began. Is when I got pissed with my therapist, you know. But then what helped is that I talked to other people that had been going to therapy and they had the same experience.
oh yeah.
Mhm.
They had this
I think
exact same experience where they got upset, right? But when they went back, you know, they were able to understand kind of what they were saying. But it is a journey,
Mhm.
and to Keenan's point, I think the thing that therapy did, I know we talk about something else, but I think this is a very important conversation, y'all. So sorry. I
no,
think
you
what
good, brother.
therapy does is it validates your feelings. It may not always validate the responses, it may not always validate the way you handle it, but it
Mhm.
validates your emotion and your feeling in response. And no one's ever wrong. And that's why I can get to a place now where I can have conversations and have conflict resolution. You guys experience that firsthand because I'm able to understand that regardless of whatever the intention was or what the experience was or how things, the factual element of it, you felt a certain way. And now I can empathize with how you feel. While I don't agree, I can empathize with how you feel. And I think therapy has allowed me to evolve to that point. And I think it is one of the most powerful tools that we can leverage as a society. Sorry,
Can you?
that's my spill.
I, I-
Mhm.
it was beautiful, bro. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
I got a question for Asia and Brittany. So, hey, y'all, this is how we are. We just rapping. So can you validate without empathizing?
can you
Like how
validate
Lewis
without
just said, like therapy validates your feelings, and like now nobody. He said, no side is really wrong. It's perspective based. Boom, boom, boom. Now I can empathize with how you feel. Can I validate your feelings without empathizing with them?
Mhm.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so, and only because like even when you are validating, right, and you can empathize, it does not mean that you would also handle it the same way, right?
Mhm.
It's being able to say like I can see like I use it a lot, like I can see how that would make you upset.
Mm.
Like I would never get upset about that, but because I know you, your personality, temperament, I can see how you would get upset by that. Right? I have both empathized, being able to see it from your perspective, and I've validated your feelings that you felt
Mhm.
upset by that thing, even though I don't necessarily feel the same way, or I wouldn't handle it the same way. So yeah, I think they go hand in hand.
Okay. All right. All right. So both because y'all are together, y'all are mirrors of each other in some way. It also shows if both partners are willing to elevate together by individual and group work. Lewis, I think this is to you, Black Man Healing and Therapy. Lewis made a great point about knowing yourself to go as you go into a relationship. There are triggers that you need to know exist and how to navigate separate from a partner. I wholeheartedly agree. Asia, we're gonna bump that last one and get into fair or foul because of time. Is that cool? I'm assuming she
Yes,
said. Okay. All
yes.
right. Bet. All right. We got